Welcome back, everybody, to a very special episode of This Is My Bourbon Podcast, where we discuss the spirit of Kentucky. My name is Perry. Thank you all so much for being here with me on this special Friday. We are about to give you a little taste of Bourbon Beyond. I sat down, with Fred Minnick of Whiskey Advocate. He is maybe the biggest, if you drink bourbon, if you listen to this show, you know who Fred Minnick is. He is maybe the biggest bourbon and whiskey writer in the world. And then we also sat down with Chef Edward Lee of Milkwood in Louisville. He has some restaurants, not just in Kentucky, but outside of the state as well. We are actually going to be at Bourbon and Beyond come September. We're super excited about coming to you somewhat live for the first time. We're looking to do some artist interviews as well, aside from sitting down with some of the big bourbon names. And I'm smiling as I say this because I'm just so excited about this opportunity to bring to you some different content, as well as get the chance to see some of my heroes, our heroes in the bourbon community. So, but before we get there, I want you to listen to and enjoy this episode where I sat down with Fred and Edward, and I hope you enjoy it. So here we go. So both of you guys just came out with new books. Recently. Yeah. I want to say congratulations, of course, first off. Fred, first, though, I want to ask you, what kind of led you to wanting to step out of the whiskey world?
Well, I'd written several books on whiskey, mm-hmm. and my first step out of it was rum, and I've always loved rum, and I've always wanted to write a book about rum. But there's a lot of crossover with rum and whiskey. Mm-hmm. For example, we in part went to war with England because we didn't like rum tariffs and molasses tariffs. And when we were a new country, we ended up tariffing rum and molasses to make sure it wouldn't go to England and also help whiskey. So that was a big reason why we had that. My mead book, which comes out in June, that was really I'm fascinated with anything historical. So when I had the opportunity to write about Vikings and ancient Greece and the Romans, I had to take advantage of it.
Of course, yeah. Now, Edward, your book is mostly about your journey mm-hmm. as a chef, and less about your recipes that you adhere to. What is it that kind of separates your story from others in the field?
So the book is actually, it's not all about me. It's actually a journey that I took. So it's 16 different cities, and I kind of tell the story of immigrant cuisines around America. And it's ultimately it's a personal journey.
Sure.
There's some of my story in there, but it's really about this really beautiful food, this sort of melting pot food that I found all over the country.
Interesting. So what is it really that kind of inspires you as a chef?
I'm just endlessly curious. I like going out, and I think the traditionally chefs have been in. They've been sort of resigned to the four walls of their kitchen, and I feel like in today's world, just like Fred's kind of exploring things outside his world of whiskey. Like I go out there and whether it's television or books or magazine articles, like it's the travel aspect is so important to me, and the more I travel, the more I see, the more I learn, the more I want to sort of show the world the things that I've learned.
I also want to say Edward's one of the most talented people you'll ever meet, period. And so it's like...
I paid him to say that.
It's like anything
he does... Did you pay to get into Bourbon and Beyond, too?
Yeah. No, you kidding me? He's the culinary of Bourbon and Beyond. But anything he does, it's like, as somebody who loves art and like consuming cool information...
of course.
He's always given that. It's just like, he's brilliant with words and food.
Well, thank you.
This is an interesting dynamic that you guys have together. How long have y'all known each other?
Oh, shit.
Decade?
Yeah. mean, more recently we've gotten to know each other well, but
Yeah.
You know, we've known each other for obviously.
I remember I got an assignment from Kentucky Monthly to do. I was doing a story on Louisville restaurants, and naturally you came up, and I spent the day with you and photographed you and all the food and wrote about it, and you asked me for one of the photos, and I never sent it to you, so.
I'm still waiting for it, by the way.
I apologize. I never sent you that photo.
I'll email you tomorrow. I'm still waiting for it.
Speaking of Louisville, you were out of Kentucky for a while, Edward. What brought you back to Kentucky, and what kind of what is it about Kentucky that inspires you as a chef and kind of has influenced your style?
Well, I mean, I think I came from New York 16 years ago. And I feel like I found my voice in Louisville, and I was, so the book Buttermilk Graffiti kind of tells a little bit of that story. Is that the graffiti is kind of like the New York in me, and the buttermilk is sort of the American South, and I felt like I was one person in New York, and when I moved to the South. I don't know. It sounds cheesy, but like I found that other voice in me that completed the picture of who I am, and it wouldn't have happened had I not moved to Louisville, and I'm really grateful for that. And I whoever I am going forward, it'll always be sort of etched in stone. In sort of Louisville and Kentucky, and I've watched. Just Fred knows. Like, I came here 16 years ago. Louisville wasn't that great of food and restaurant and bar town 16 years ago.
No one could make a mint julep here then.
Yeah, and we've seen it grow from being kind of a sleepy sort of, it's kind of, sort of stuck in the old ways to like this really relevant, vibrant, cool city that the world is coming to like experience this thing. So it's really cool to see that transition. And I didn't leave, so I expanded my business to DC. So I go back and forth. So for everyone out there that thinks I left, I live in both cities. I go back and forth.
Setting the record straight.
Yeah. He's getting that a lot lately. So
sure,
I get hit with it a lot.
Sure, yeah. Fred, a lot of people have been saying that 2018, there's something big in store for us for bourbon. What do you think 2018 is the year of?
For bourbon as American whiskey?
Yeah.
Well, I think this is actually the year that we see kind of like a return of premium age-stated, really great bourbons that kind of went away for a little bit.
Sure.
So that's the part of it from a taste perspective. The bad part is they're going to be really expensive. Like you're already starting to see it, like the price points of things like Old Fitzgerald 11-year-old, the King of Kentucky, which is coming out soon from Brown Forman. Those things are going to be extraordinarily priced. In terms of like that's from just the pure bourbon side. But I think like this is the year that bourbon starts ascending more into pop culture and the mainstream. And Ed, this is something that we're a part of. Bourbon Beyond is a big part of that, and it's part of like bourbon taking that next step into artistry of other, into other aspects of life. And this year with Bourbon Beyond, there's, Edward's, curating the culinary. You've got Sting on stage, Robert Plant, Lenny Kravitz, John Mayer, any number of great bands, but that is something that 15, 20 years ago no one in bourbon could ever imagine. Even when bourbon was starting to boom and when it reached its height, people still could not imagine bourbon actually headlining over actual rock stars.
Sure. And I think that's kind of what sets Bourbon and Beyond apart from everything that's come before, is that it literally is the headliner. I mean, how many times have we said that over the past almost year now since it's become a thing.
And I heard the Pope drinks bourbon or something. Right?
Yeah, now the Pope has got a bottle of Pappy.
Was it 23
For
years?
God's sake.
We should get the Pope to do Bourbon and Beyond.
He could
just like give a sermon at Bourbon and Beyond.
He likes music.
Yeah.
I don't know if Sting's his flair, but
I wonder if he'd be the headliner then.
He'd want to do service.
He might really love Led Zeppelin. So, Robert Plant's going to be there this year.
Yeah, it's Stairway to Heaven, right? Maybe the Pope comes out to Stairway to Heaven and does communion.
Just a cameo. That'd be cool.
Are we going to hell for talking about this?
Do I need to cut this out of the
No, you're fine.
episode?
You're fine.
So I'm gonna kind of pose this to the both of y'all. What was it that kind of attracted you or made you want to get involved with Bourbon and Beyond?
Well,
or the idea of it?
Yeah, I listen. I've actually, and Fred knows this, and we've been on think tanks together, and we've been actually pushing for a bourbon festival for years. I mean, we've always felt like. And I think you agree. The Bourbon Festival in is it Bardstown, Kentucky? Though it's very popular and big, and I thought like there was still room to do a one that was Louisville centric, and the mayor had a think tank, and we kind of went back and forth, and so when the guys from Danny Wimmer came down and wanted to invest in it, I think we were all on board from day one.
Yeah. I was not actually a part of those think tanks because, for most in the mayor's office, I'm still a journalist.
Sure.
So I'm very warm and receptive over there. Most people, when I come into meetings now, they start the whole thing off with like, Fred, this is off the record.
Right.
So like if I'm ever doing anything in association with Bourbon and Beyond, for planning or whatever, it all starts with, it's off the record. And it's like, come on, guys, come on. But when they came to me and they kind of gave me their vision, I thought to myself, this is exactly what bourbon needs. This is what bourbon needs to take that next step. Because what happens is, the inevitability of any show like that tends to be very whiskey centric. It gets the same customers every single year. Sure. And like people who go to a lot of these festivals, they see the same people. That's fantastic. That's great. But when they presented Bourbon and Beyond to me, I thought to myself, this is what will bring in new people. Mm-hmm. This will capture people that bourbon would not get otherwise. This is going to get a Sting fan in Germany or a Led Zeppelin fan in Seattle. And it's going to convert them in from whatever they are into bourbon fans.
Right. And to build on that, too, Eddie Vedder played last year.
That's exactly right.
My dad is a big Pearl Jam fan. He had friends coming in from Scotland.
Oh, wow.
Just to see Eddie Vedder play. And
one of my favorite pieces that was written after Bourbon and Beyond last year was that people were analyzing how many people were hanging out in the big bourbon bar versus just watching the music, and they were actually doing both because you could do both.
Yeah.
And to me this is like one of those great next steps, not just in bourbon, but in kind of like this culinary pairing that we have in life, is that I believe you can pair food and music, or food and drink to music, and imagine just listening to your favorite band ever and with the best bourbon ever. It's great. It's a good time.
That's exciting for me because I'm a real big John Mayer fan.
I took you as a John Mayer fan, actually. The moment we met.
Was it the hair?
Like John Mayer.
Was it the hair?
Like
yeah, all right, thanks.
He's good.
You're a lookalike.
Yeah, I'm also a guitar player. I'm very much inspired by his work, but that's completely off topic. But anyway,
it's all good.
Edward, how do you kind of incorporate bourbon into your food and some of the recipes that you do?
I think the restaurants here, because people from Kentucky eat out at my restaurants. I think what's unique about Louisville, as opposed to any other place in the world, is people actually drink bourbon through dinner, and I think we're still The rest of the world really still, they do that a little bit, but then they're catching on. But the idea that you can actually, like, you don't have to drink a bourbon and then switch to wine and then go back to bourbon at the end of the night. That you could actually drink bourbon all through the meal. And
Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Yeah.
That influences how I design menus and design recipes, and because I want to make food. And I also just, intuitively like food that's very bold and aggressive and spiced and smoky, but those tend to be flavors that go perfect with bourbon. And so I love it when people just kind of, sit down and look at the menu and go, oh, there's nothing wrong with wine. But like when they basically say, oh, I can drink bourbon, my favorite bourbon all through dinner. And that's just something that's very unique to Kentucky. And so I take advantage of it, and I'm thrilled by it.
So how did that kind of influence your, you're one half of the Jefferson's chef collaboration. How did that affect your experience with that then?
With the making of the bourbon?
Yeah.
Well, so Jeff, the Trey is kind of he takes the lead on it. We basically sit around and drink. It's not really like I'll be honest. There's not really like this huge technical thing.
It's not scientific, sure.
But we have different expressions and ages and rye and bourbon, and we just kind of pour it into glasses, and we someone keeps track of the percentages and the ounces, and
that's good. Someone else is doing the hard work.
Yeah. So because after like 6 or 7, we're like, what was in that? I don't remember. But it's fun, I guess, Trey sort of, it's it's truly a collaboration. Like I just have I don't know how bourbon is made on a very technical level. I know flavor and I know what I like, and so whenever something hits on it, basically what'll happen is I'll say to Trey, like, can we make it a little spicier? And he'll go, okay, I know how to do that. So he'll kind of mess with the percentage, and I'll say, well, why don't we try it a little sweeter? And then he'll mix with it. And so we kind of do that, and then we hit something that we like.
I mean, it's very good. So I mean, it works.
What the chef's collab for me is it's a whiskey, technically not a bourbon because there's rye in it.
Sure.
But it's a whiskey that you can have throughout dinner. That is not overly aggressive. To me, it's very round. It's very pleasing.
Of course.
It's not like hopefully it's not a luxury bourbon. It's not a too aggressive. It just kind of like. It's round around the edges, and I think that's the kind of bourbon that you want to kind of sip through all night, and that's what we made it for. We made it specifically to go with food.
Good deal. So I'm going to, of course, try to bring it back around to Bourbon and Beyond. That's what we're sitting here talking about. We're supposed to be talking about, at least.
Talk about whatever you want.
Well,
we talked about it a little bit.
That's true as well.
Yeah.
What can we kind of expect from Milkwood or just you in general? At Bourbon and Beyond this year.
Well, I'm doing. I don't know if the tickets are still on sale, but I'm doing a really cool dinner at the Ali Center with Tom Colicchio.
Okay.
So that'll be pretty badass. And then, I'm just looking forward to being out there. We have all these different live action stages. I think Whiskey Dry is going to do a burger station over there. So we'll be all over the place, and we're trying to get some of the musicians to take some cooking classes while they're backstage, and we're trying to get all the we've got some really. If you guys haven't looked at it, the visiting chefs, Sting's cool and all, but having Aaron Sanchez and Stephanie Izard is to me, they're the real rock stars because I'm a chef. So I'm actually more excited about the chefs that are coming to town. There's truly talented people coming into town. So definitely don't miss out on the food aspect of it. I think it's what sets this music fest apart. And a lot of the feedback I heard last year was people were so impressed and so happy with the food part of it. That if something is not unexpected, because most of the time I've been to other music fests before and the food kind of sucks, and to get like actual food, curated or made by a chef while you're drinking bourbon, while you're listening to music, it's pretty unique.
Yeah, it's that he's spot on about the chefs. It's like a who's who list, and we're talking all the major shows are represented. And you've got and they're going to be cooking for you. You get an opportunity to, if you get one of those tickets, you get an opportunity to eat some of the good stuff.
Sure. And on that same kind of note, what are we expecting from the bourbon side of things this year?
Well, bourbon. So the Anchor, the big bourbon bar, where there's a lot of bourbons in there being poured either straight or in cocktails. That'll be back.
Good.
And there's going to be what they call activations, where it's basically like their Rabbit Hole has a speakeasy. Larceny has an area where you can pair pizza with Larceny, and they've got a secret like code password for you to unlock something there.
That sounds awesome.
There's a lot of cool things like that, and then this I curated more than 30 workshops, and we basically are getting in the down and dirty of how bourbon's made, the families behind bourbons. But the one thing that I'm most excited about, and it's the first time it's ever happened, is that I'm getting Jim Beam's Master Distiller Fred No and Jack Daniel's Master Distiller Jeff Arnett on the stage.
Cool.
And we're going to settle some things in American whiskey, and so that's going to be a lot of fun. We're also doing this thing where I call it a family affair, and I get the Van Winkles on stage, and we talk about what it's like growing up in whiskey, the Russells,
right.
the Coles Fiends from Willett, and then we talk about yeast, we talk about barrel entry proof. We got a lot of cool stuff. And one other thing is if you're in the trade or you're in the business, there's Stave and Thief is going to have ongoing classes there,
right.
where you can get your executive bourbon stewardship and
okay.
become certified
Cool.
while you're there.
Gotcha.
If I can make a suggestion, I think the Rabbit Hole secret bar should be dug underground like a true rabbit hole.
That would be so cool.
And you have to just like sit in this bunker underground and drink
That'd be
whiskey.
so cool. And,
I don't know if I would leave at that point.
Yeah.
And Death & Co. is doing the Rabbit Hole bar, and they're a famous bar
that's
in
gonna be
New
cool.
York.
Very cool. So I want to wrap it up with a couple kind of fun questions, I guess.
They're all fun.
Well, sure, yeah. But maybe more nebulous, I guess.
Sure.
If you could have anybody, Fred and Edward too, attend or play the show or play the festival, who'd be your dream guest?
Well, I think we mentioned the Pope.
The Pope would be good.
The
Pope would be good.
Pope he'd be up there.
Send him an invitation.
I'd like to see Bob Dylan, if anyone's
goodness.
listening. Bob, if you're listening. John Mayer wants you on stage.
I think, for me, it would have been Tom Petty.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he passed away. But, in that same vein, we're getting a lot of them this year.
Of course.
Like Robert Plant has always been on my bucket list. I think Neil Young would be a fun one for Bourbon Beyond.
Absolutely.
Would be great.
I think you and I talked last year that you would spoon feed him foie gras if he came, and then I would give him bourbon.
If you did a 1-2 with Neil Young and Willie Nelson, that would be killer.
Willie Nelson would be a lot of fun.
Willie Nelson would be a blast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's a huge foodie. He loves food.
He had his own whiskey for a long time.
And
I don't know if it's still out.
He does something in Texas like a fest, something that has food in it.
Have you had the whiskey before?
Whiskey River?
Yeah.
It's been a while, but he was typical of that style, those younger ones.
I've had it fairly recently and wasn't super enthused by it. But
Is it infused with weed?
No. Although there are people who are trying to infuse. They are actively infusing things with weed.
I've had weed infused wine.
Yeah.
It's too funky for me.
Yeah. It's a funny trend. Like that's
when they're doing with food too now. It's like
that's more
that
natural
goes
to me
back
than
decades.
spirits.
Yeah. Well, cuisine, better than
that's
brownies.
not a culinary, trick.
No. Chefs are doing like these intricate dinners using weed.
Sure.
It's I don't know.
I've had people reach out to me like, "Hey, do you write tasting notes on weed?"
Right.
I'm like, "No."
That's your next job.
I don't do.
Smells like skunk.
Yeah. Like what would a marijuana tasting note look like?
Oh, they're out there.
Yeah.
They get pretty.
They get extravagant. It has a hint of.
Hint of rainbow unicorn.
Oh, it's great.
And then I think the last question I have to ask is, what is the one dish I think that you represent, or that you think represents you as a chef?
Oh, jeez, I don't know. There's a lot of dishes. It's anything that comes out of my kitchen. They're all. It's hard to pick one.
Sure.
But we do. I want to plug. We're doing this summer. We're switching the format at Milkwood, and we're going to do dim sum all summer long. So it's a really fun format because we'll do like the Asian dim sum format, but we'll kind of play with a lot of different Southern flavors on it. So stuff like that is really fun.
Will you keep the ramen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, that's good.
Fred's pretty set on the ramen being on the menu.
Yeah, I was talking about it earlier. It's
No, we're gonna keep that and just we're just gonna have fun with it over the summer. So
Good deal.
awesome.
Just to kind of wrap things up real quick, if people want to find you on social media, where can they do that? Both of y'all.
Just Fred Minnick.
yeah, I think
Everywhere.
Minnick.
Yeah. I think I'm Chef Edward Lee on everything. So.
Well, thank you guys so much for sitting down with me. I appreciate it.
No, pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to Bourbon and Beyond.
All right, we'll see you on stage, John.
So that was our little interview with Fred Minnick and Chef Edward Lee. Before we let you go, I want to say thank you so much for listening. As always, if you want to find us on social media, it's changed recently. We are at My Bourbon Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you want to send us an email, we are still thisismybourbonshop@gmail.com. If you want to find our merchandise, you can head to bourbonshop.threadless.com. Become a patron of the show at patreon.com/This Is My Bourbon Podcast. For as little as $1 a month, you can keep us going. We would love to have your support. We're, like I said, super excited to be heading to Bourbon and Beyond come September. But until then, check us out next week. Check out this week's episode with Curtis and Tanner. Can't wait to be back with you. But until then, I'm Perry, and this is My Bourbon Podcast.